Hey everybody, I am just getting set up, so hang in there. I am making sure I have my laptop set up so I can get questions from you guys. And I thought I'd at least say hello today, face to face. I have my new color going that I just did today, so you guys are the first to see the new color. You can tell me what you think. Let's see. Facebook. Find us live. Oh, there I am. I thought I'd at least say hello today, face to face. I have my new color going that I just did today. And you can probably hear the delayed effect there. So, okay. And I did know you'd love the color, Kim. This is kind of a signature Kim pink going. So what we are doing today is we're going to do some hair, and we are going to look at some requests at the end of our last session that we did together. Were some of the things like not just color, but doing things like braids or updos, shorter hair for like guys, some of those trickier situations, or curly or wavy hair. So that's what we're looking at today. So it's kind of hair part 2, and we'll do a real quick refresher of some of the things we talked about the first time, kind of my 3 rules of general Copic hair coloring. So, but yeah, that's what we're doing today. So if you get dizzy when the camera moves, close your eyes for just a minute, because I'm going to shift us and I'm going to get you focused down on my table. All right. All right. Close your eyes and I'll tell you when to open. All right. We've got camera moving. I'm tightening this back up. Oh, thank you on the bunk beds. Yes, that's our guest room. So this is our guest room / my office. So if you ever visit us and you have kids, they've got a place to stay. So one of the groups of things that we have looked at, we started looking at hair last time. We've done some skin with our trendy tease stamps. And then we started looking at hair, and 3 of the things, and I'm just bringing these up again because, and you're welcome anytime. And oh yes, see, my markers are standing nearby in my crafty mug, appropriate for today. 3 of the things we talked about, and these are general hair coloring rules. We're trying to do no choppy pieces, meaning little tiny chunks of Copic kind of in the middle of the hair. We always start at the part and at the bottom if we can and work inward. But there's some exceptions to that rule. These are just kind of general, but when I see little tiny choppy strokes, that tends to lead to not happy hair coloring. Number 2 was vary the stroke length, even in dark colors, so that some of my dark strokes are coming all the way into the highlight and some are shorter. But if I do all of my dark color one length, we end up with these real distinct bands of color. So that was number 2. And then number 3 was making sure to go with the flow of the hair. So the examples I gave were this little boy of not going with the flow, kind of going against the artist lines, and then also going with the flow, kind of going in the direction of the hair growth. And so those were what we reviewed last time. I will set those off to the side. And then what we're talking about this time were things like curly hair, wavy hair, braids, updo. So I have this whole plethora of stamps that I pulled out to look at with you guys today. So one of the first things I thought we could look at is guys' hair. So I pulled out this one, and this is Leaves Are Falling. And then of course we have two guys on the trendy tees. And so the two gentlemen, the boy and the dad kind of figures, have a really similar hairstyle. So if you know how to do one, you definitely can do both. Let's see if I can get a little closer. There we go. But the idea is that you're trying to go in the direction that the artist has given us, in the direction of the hair growth. So on the boy's hair, and the dad too, we have this part that's happening all the way back here. And he has this kind of bang, heavy bang that comes up and over the top, or that top portion of hair. And then he has these two little side pieces. And on this particular one, they actually aim back. So on this guy, and I'm not going to do fancy color work today because I want to kind of more show you guys what I'm doing. A lot of times I will base my hair in a solid color, and it's my lightest. So this one is actually E21. I know Kim can keep us up to date on all the stamps we're going to use today, because I just pulled out a bunch, but it was more an issue of different styles specifically that we were looking at. So these are the first two. And then I shifted just to E23. And normally I would give this a little more time to dry in between, but I want to get through kind of a ton of info with you guys today. So the first big piece is actually the easier piece, and that's this swath of hair that goes over the top of his head. So it's going to come from that part, and it's going to come out across that kind of chunk of hair that falls across his face and across the top of his head. And I go from both directions. Underneath, we have this little tiny piece where we can see kind of underneath and back. That is going to get dark. So I can fill that in now, or I can wait and use my darkest. Either way. Then these guys are tricky because it looks like they've been combed back away from the face. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to go straight from the face back. I'm not going to try to come back in. That would immediately just fill it in. So I'm going to focus on coming from the face outward. And it's going to get pretty dark. You're only going to have a little bit of highlight kind of right at the edges. And then with my darkest color, in this case, I'm just going to go 3, E25. So that little tiny space underneath, we know that's going to go all the way dark. So I'll do that. And then I just have fewer strokes, different lengths, coming from the same starting points. Just won't have as many of them. And then same thing on these little side pieces. So say, and I always use this example, so say I did 8 or 10 strokes with my mid-tone, then when I come back with my darkest, I might only have like 4 to 6. And that being said, I never count how many strokes I've done. I don't do that, but I'm doing fewer, and that's what I know. So guys' hair can be extremely quick, but I really am trying to pay attention to the direction. I don't always get to come back like from both directions because the sections are so tiny. The other type of hair you'll see, especially when they have it kind of close cropped along the side, is that this will come downward. And then if it was, I would just aim those little flicks from that part downward, and then most of the time I can do 1 or 2 from the bottom up. But those are kind of the two styles you'll see with men's hair that's kind of cropped like this. The other way we see boys' hair is more similar to this fall leaves image, where instead of having a really distinct part, although we have this spot at the center front, We almost always have this cowlick in the back, and I don't know why that is. I think because boys keep their hair shorter, but a lot of times we do these little cowlicks or little swirls in the back that create these little flicks up, the little alfalfas in the back. So again, I'm going to keep my color combination really simple today. I'm going back to my E21 and I'm adding that base color. And there's a lot of people that will leave white and have that be their highlight. I don't do that very often in my coloring. It's a personal choice. And normally, again, I would let this dry just a little bit. But then think about it this way. There's no distinct part that runs all the way down his hair. But I still have two starting points. I have his little cowlick. And then I also have kind of these edges that are coming up and into that cowlick. So that's where I'm going. I'm going to come from that cowlick, and see the artist has even shown us it aims forward, and then it's going to kind of aim and pinwheels or fans out from that little spot. It does the same thing on the other hair, is that it comes then back from the fringes at the face and aims back toward that little cowlick spot. Now, this is going to be one of those times too that if you need to spin your piece of paper, please, please do. My hand is deciding today it would rather not go in all directions. Most of us can't. Sometimes I can, but today it's saying no. So I'll be spinning him a bit. So what I end up with is this kind of curved, almost halo effect of that highlight. And that actually is what I'm going for. So it's dark kind of at the top, right at that little alfalfa back here. And then we have this kind of highlight that's going to run pretty much all the way around his head. Even though we can't see the backside, we know it would be there as well. With my dark, which in this case is still my E25, fewer flicks. So same starting point, same action, flicking out different lengths, not quite as many. And then a few coming back. Now, on an image like this, you could choose to make him have a more distinct part, because the artist has hinted at that with this little piece right here in front where it comes to a V. You could give him a more distinct part. You could actually add that in by coming out a little bit further and coming out from that part. I just feel like he's got a big kind of bushy little boy haircut, kind of that bowl mom stuck, just trimmed straight across the bangs and kind of trimmed up around his ears and called it good. So to me, this kind of looks fun and loose. So one thing that I did not do on the first, if you get to this stage of coloring hair and you're like, okay, all I see is my flicks. I can't stand it. It looks very zebra-like. When I always tell people to finish up is if you want to go back to your lightest color, since I only had 3, I skip my mid-tone, go back to my lightest, and I do kind of a single wash of color. I'm not sitting and circling. I'm not scrubbing back and forth, but it softens those edges just enough that for a lot of people, this gets it to that stage. So they're like, that's it. That's all it needed. Perfect. Good to go. So again, similar rules than what we talked about the first time, but we're going in the direction that the artist is. We're not trying to fight what they've already put on there. That doesn't work. But with guys, sometimes we have to adjust our rules a little bit and only go from one direction because we've got such short little sections to work with on their hair. Sometimes you'll see ones that it's sticking up. And again, you might go from then the forehead up, but you might not get to come back down at all because that little butch kind of fuzzy haircut on top isn't going to allow you to do that. All right. And obviously on these guys, don't forget their eyebrows. I usually use one of my darker, at least the mid-tone, if not darker. They always look a little funny once I've done the hair and they don't have eyebrows. So don't forget those on those guys. All right. Then we were going to talk about some curly hair. So I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, believe it or not, 3 ladies with curly hair. I have Let Them Eat Cupcakes, and she's got curly, but it's leaning into wavy. So we're going to save her for last. And then we have 2 others. We have this little one from You Give Me Wings, and she's definitely got curly hair. I picked out ones that I felt like were fairly obvious. And then the last one I pulled out is from My Happy Place. And this little gal also has a distinctly kind of curly look. So I'm pretty excited about all 3, but what I love too is that they're very different images. All of them distinctly have a curly, at least wavy look to them, but they all definitely have curl going on in that hair. So we're going to attack that in a couple different ways. I'm going to start with the one that's kind of in between, the little fairy from You Give Me Wings. And we're going to go a little darker just to change it up. So I'm going to use some E4s. So I've got an E4-3, an E4-4, and an E4-7. And then if we want to go darker, we can. But just to give you an idea kind of what we're doing here. So again, I am going to go and fill my hair in. So depending on what group of colors you're using, the fun part to me about teaching you guys some techniques is you can change up your images, you can change up the markers, because this is about kind of a how-to. It's not going to have, in our time, we're not going to necessarily have a finished image. In fact, I know we won't, but it gives you some ideas about how to color a bunch of your image. Yay. I know, Kim, that was one of the things I loved about these 3 images. It's because they were different stamp artists. We have very distinctly different styles, and that's part of the beauty of you guys letting me do a class like this for everybody you're doing this live, is that now they can see a whole bunch of different ways to do this. All right. So E44 is going to be next. Now she's definitely got curl, but it's not super tight curl. So what I typically do is call this what I call a squiggle or a scribble. So what this is going to look like is it kind of goes every which way. There's some curves, there's some little points and angles. It goes to the right, it goes to the left, it goes up, it goes down. But that's going to kind of fill with this mid-tone. That's going to come in and fill in all of her little curls. And I keep it small. She doesn't have a very large head. It's not a whole lot bigger than my thumb. But it goes really, really fast. And that gives me the start of that texture. Then with a darker color, I want to start adding that shape. So remember, her head's round, it's a ball, a sphere, and then her hair is on top of that ball, so it has that spherical shape, and then it curls back in as it comes in around her little face. So we know this little edge is going to be darker around her little face as it tucks in. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to do kind of a few more squiggles or scribbles. And then I'm going to come up, and as I get higher, my scribbles are going to kind of spread out. I may have little pieces. And I can also accentuate some of these little lines that the artist has given me where she's showing, oh, this is where it pops out. This is where it pops out, so I can leave the top of those little curves a little bit lighter. And I think for this little hair, especially because she's just so small, I think I want one more color because I really do want to show some of these little individual shapes. So I've got that general shape that it's getting darker around her face as it's curling in. but I'd really like it to go one more and see some of these little pop out pieces. So I'm going to use an E49. I'm going to go right along this bottom edge. Again, I'm using more of a scribbly stroke. I'm not like filling that area in. And then I'm going to come in right along some of these little pop out pieces so that they pop out even more. And the beauty of this is I can still, just like I did with that little boy's head of hair, is I can come all the way back to my lightest color. I'm going to start in those light areas and soften that. So there is a little loose kind of curly look. So that is one way with those little scribbles or squiggles that we can tackle some curly hair. Number two, sometimes the hair looks like it's even tighter curls. So let's look at that on hers, because to me, her hair looks like it's got really tight little curls. So again, I'm going to start by giving myself curly hair. Kim, I think we overthink too much on occasion. I know I do. I will tell you, curly hair, actually, in particular, you can make pretty easy. I think wavy hair is probably the trickiest of all of them. That's why I haven't hit that one yet. So with this one, I would actually, instead of those squiggles, because this is so tight, I would actually encourage you to maybe try doing dots instead. So I'm going to grab my E44. And you might have a few little squiggles like along the front of her face because it looks like she's pulled it back. So it might have pulled some of that curl out just a little bit. But then as I get out closer to her ponytail, her little puff, poof, I'm actually going to do dots. And this is just with the tip of my brush nib. And again, this could be a couple little strokes or squiggles up front. And then in the poof, and as you go toward the poof, I'm just doing dots. And with my first color, you're going to notice this again. I do that texture kind of throughout. So I'm not trying to shape it yet. I'm trying to give it that curly, tight, curly texture. So that's what I'm starting with. And then I'm going to add that shape. So we've got her little round head, and then we've got a little round poof. So now we've got not one sphere or ball, but now we've got two of them kind of stacked on top of each other. So we know we're going to get a little darker as we come into her little face. But then as it comes up, it's going to get lighter. So my dots are going to spread out. So I may only have one or two little dots as we get closer to her little poof. Then I'm going to put one or two little strokes because it looks like it got pulled tight again as it pulls into that hairband. We'll do the same at this end. We'll give it a couple little flicks to kind of accentuate that fact that it got tightened in. And then here's our second sphere. So it's going to be dark toward the bottom. And then as it goes up, it'll get lighter. Same thing on this one. I think I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit to really give that shape. pull it in right against her little face because I love pushing that one more level. And I think I'll just go above the hair tie with the dark and call it good. Now, on the other ones, if I wanted to soften it, I kind of did that light wash over it. On this one, I would actually do it different. Two options. You can use a colorless blender, but I personally would go for a lighter earth tone. So I would go for something that ends in a 0. So I'm going to grab my E50. Kim, it looks like I'm still going. It says still live and my laptop is still going. So I think unfortunately it might be you. I'll try to keep an eye on it. What I'm going to do with the lighter earth tone is slowly go in and dot on that. What that's going to do is it's going to soften some of those dots and kind of smash them together. It's also going to add a whole nother layer of that texture, but you do have to slow down. You can't just dot it on. So you have to hold it for a couple seconds, kind of give yourself that 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It doesn't take long, but you do have to pause. You can't just dab it on. It won't work as effectively. Now on this one, you might even see a slight color change. And what's happening here is not only am I getting this beautiful softening effect and adding to my texture, but because this E50 is a warmer earth tone, it's kind of warming that back up. So this is a really fun way to do curly hair as well. So we've got squiggles, we've got kind of dots mostly, a few little squiggles and strokes here and there, but there's 2 of them. Then if we shift onto this little gal from Let Them Eat Cupcakes, now we're somewhere in between. We're curly, but she's kind of leaning toward wavy. So you have a couple options. You can do one of the techniques we just did. You can do the squiggles, you can do the dots, and either one would work just fine, or you can treat it as wavy, and wavy hair gets trickier. So what I did is I pulled out another image that I could show this to you on because it has a little more wave going and we can kind of transfer that information between the two. So this is the hardest of the 3 and we're going to attack her first, but we're going to use the information and transfer it onto our Let's Eat Cupcakes. So this image is just one more page. I love her hair. It's one of my more favorite ones to color on. So we're going to do this. We're going to switch back to our E2s. And I'm going to go ahead and color it in. And then if anyone has taken a Copic class from me where we have talked about hair, you've probably gotten this spiel from me before. So I apologize for that. This is another one that you can kind of do 3 different ways. So one, 2, 3. Okay. 3 different ways we can do wavy hair because it gets more complicated. To me, curly is actually easier. Wavy hair, though, adds a little challenge. So number 1, we can ignore what the artist has given us. It's wavy hair. I want to make it look wavy, but I'm not going to look specifically at the lines. So what I would do in that case is I would do kind of those squiggles that we were practicing along the length of the waves. Call it good. You get lighter toward the outer edge of the hair where it's catching light. You could do some at the top and the bottom getting darker so you have that halo effect, but pretty much ignoring the waves. Number 2, if her little face was over here, you would be darker in toward the face, lighter as you go away from the face. So what would happen is you would go dark along each wave and then get lighter as you came out with color, not just with a single color, but this gives you the idea. 3, and you can tell we're getting harder as we go. 3, you treat each wave individually. So this is where it goes a little cray-cray. So if it dips in toward her face, it gets darker. So darker, 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 darker. It's dipping in and coming out, darker. As it comes up and bends away from her face, it gets lighter. So yes, this gets a little crazy because you're literally coloring each individual piece of hair. Is it beautiful? Yes. Yes, it's beautiful. However, it takes some time and patience. All right. So on this little gal, and I don't know that we even need to do her whole head of hair to show you this effect. But so the rule, if we go all the way with the tough one, is as it's bending in towards her face, it's going to get darker. So I'm going to start at the top and it curves in toward her face. Got a little fold right there. So I just kind of go through piece by piece. Where is it going back in? And it's hard because just like this doesn't match up. It's not lined up perfectly like mine are. So you just have to kind of go through piece by piece and figure out where is it dipping in? Where is it pushing out when it comes out from behind something? Kind of tucked in so we can darken it there and push it back out. I'm gonna jump and get this darker right in the depth. So again, I'm going for where it's the deepest or pushed back in the furthest. So right in that center, pushing out, and I'm going to definitely have to do my midtone again. This one takes some playing back and forth. The little face, the little head of hair on Let's Eat Cupcakes, I think we'll be able to simplify a little bit. I just felt like this gave you a little bit bigger view of what I was talking about. All right. So now we can take this midtone and pull it a little bit further out into those highlights. So we can break those up a little bit and go all the way up and over those curves a few times. There we go. Now it's looking like hair. But this is the trickiest by far, hair like this. So give yourself some grace. This takes some time and some practice and patience to get to where you want it. And there are different ways to do it. This second route of putting just that dark all the way along that line, kind of to the left of that line, and then on the other side of the face would be to the right of the line. That actually is considerably easier and less time consuming. So it's kind of one baby step in that direction. This gets more complicated, but the end results is pretty amazing. So I'm going to go back in with my lightest and brighten up those highlights just a little bit. But now we can see that in and out, kind of that undulating wave of her hair. And that was the goal. So there we go. So taking this information, hello Sheila, we're going to shift that and see if we can't do something similar on our gal from Let Them Eat Cupcakes. So I'm going to go ahead and color in her hair with my E21, and we'll let it sit for a second here. And then we can go ahead, you can start with the dark if you're confident. If you're not super confident, you can always start with that mid-tone and go back and forth more, if that makes sense. So like on this gal, you know how I started making those waves with my E23, which is my mid-tone, and then did my dark, and then went back to my E23. I can skip the E23 at the start. I could actually go right into that dark color. It's more a confidence level. How confident are you that you know where you want to put those things? If I put that mid-tone down first, I typically can kind of smush things around and get it to change if I need to. If I put my darkest down, it's kind of sitting. It's hard to make changes. So depending on your confidence level, that's what you're going to pick up first once you've got this base layer down. If you're super confident, you're going to pick up your darkest color and work dark to light and get those little dips in there right at the get-go and kind of spread them out. If you're not as confident, you're going to map it out with one of your midtones first. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my dark color. I figure I am practicing today and learning today. So if I get something a little wrong, I'm okay with that. So I'm going to go along the outside of her hair, and I'm going to look, and this is all behind the headband. And I'm going to look for where it dips in. So I'm talking about where is it pointing towards her face? Where's a dip? So here's a really obvious one. It dips in right here. So I'm going to create this little wave that comes in here. Then I'm going to come back here. Here's another real obvious one. And it's going to come up toward her little, so these are really truly going to be these big waves. And then these are not as defined, so we could even do some little squiggles down there. We've got a distinct one right here, and there's a tiny one that might kind of bump into that one. So let's start with the back portion of her hair. So we've got our darkest color. With my mid-tone, since I started with my dark, now I can extend these further and come out and over. And it's kind of like I'm giving her almost a little bit of a dated look in that these are almost like pin curls. How they had that real distinct wave. So I'm not eliminating the highlight color, but I'm losing a lot of it at this point, kind of breaking that up. So I'm pretty pleased with that. Here's one thing that people notice with this effect. You can see a pretty distinct kind of band of my dark color, band of the dark color. And if that is bothering you, what you can do is with that dark color, go in, and you don't need very many of them, but take a few little flicks that come up and into that highlight. Remember our talk about making sure not to let all of your strokes be the same length. This is what's happening. All of my dark strokes are the same length. And so suddenly I have this distinct band of that dark color. So if I break that up, even with just 2 or 3 little spots at each section, that's going to make a huge difference. Then to finish the back of her hair, I'm going to go ahead and soften that with my lightest color. And let's go ahead and finish her up so we don't have this kind of funky two-tone look here on her face or around her face. I know this little section that we see, the underside, is going to be darker. And then I think this part I can do more like work along the direction of the hair. So I'm going to come from that little part out and curl up and kind of headband out a couple little strokes. Lengthen that and extend that with my mid-tone. And just right into those two broad areas. Come back and soften into that highlight area. All right, wavy hair. These are the trickiest. The little gal from Let Them Eat Cupcakes, you could absolutely do with one of the techniques we used earlier with either the dots or the squiggles. She would work really well with the squiggles in particular. She doesn't have a super tight curl, so that would be an option if you didn't want to do the painstaking kind of wave piece. But there are a bunch of options for curly hair. And what we'll do this time is, like last time I took photos and included those in a separate post from the video. I will do that again for this. So you guys will have record of that. Let's see, I have one more thing. I have no idea what time it is. I started so frantic. All right, we are in good shape. One of the other things people had asked about would be things like updos or braids. So I pulled out one more stamp set, and I promise this is the last one, Kim. Sorry about that. But it's, so Let's Get Crafty or Feeling Crafty. No, Crafty Love is the last one I pulled out because she has a bun. And there's a couple other stamp images at Craft and Kimmy that have buns. One of them I have that it's from, it's one that's not in stock right now that I love, and I would have used her, but she's not in stock. Thank you, Jill. It's my job to make it look easy. That's my job, to make this look easy and fun. What I can tell you is if you give yourself some patience and practice it a little more frequently, so find an image that you like. If you like that Let Them Eat Cupcakes image, do her 100 times. And you don't have to even do 100. Do a dozen times though, and practice that hair. It does get easier. It really does, promise. An updo, and this little girl is a little trickier because she's got all of her tools tucked in her hair. Again, it's as much as anything, it's about looking for direction of hair. But we've got a marker and a ruler and barrettes, and so it makes it a little trickier. We've got the added challenge here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work from light to dark again this time, because I'm not trying to do the overlapping I was on the wavy hair. But let's think about the direction that we're going with the hair. So we've got three distinct areas. We've got this heavy swath of bangs that's going to come from here into that point. Then we've got the bulk of her hair that's then getting pulled back into a hair tie. And then we've got the round bun that's coming out and probably back in toward the center. So we've got three distinct directions and one little piece off to the side we don't want to forget. But so we can treat them each separately. So we've got the one that's coming down across her face. So we come from the one end, different lengths, flicking across, not as many, but a few coming back up from that tip. And this you can vary because the artist has shown us that you're seeing some of the facial features in between the strands of hair. To me, that's really hard to leave that completely, how much is hair, because I don't leave white typically. So you can play with that as much as you want, how much skin you're seeing through there. From the bun itself, the back riding on her head, we come out from that hair tie and fan out. And then we come back where it's getting pulled back from her hairline along her face and getting pulled back into that bun. Same thing on the bun itself. We can see those lines. The artist is showing us exactly which direction that hair is traveling. And then we go from the top. We might have some little short ones because it's probably catching some light up there as it comes back around. So there's our first kind of round of mapping that out. When we go back in with a darker color, we do all the same spots, we just do less of it again. And yes, I sound like a broken record most of the time when I teach because it's some of the same things over and over again, but it's what works. All right, darker, fewer flicks, some are shorter, some are still long. Only one or two now coming up from this bottom piece, bottom corner. From the bun, it comes out from under that bun where it's getting tucked in tight. And a few, I'm going to focus these guys more to the back of her head and around that ear. I know that section's going to be darker than this part up here. So I'm going to focus my dark kind of down by her ear. Same thing from the bun. It's going to have more coming up from underneath the bun. You could have one or two from the top, but in this case, I'm actually going to leave that alone. I'm not going to put any from the top down. I just feel like it's so high on top of her head that we're not going to get a whole bunch of that coming back down. Once you feel like you've got, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the ins and outs I want to see. I'm seeing the shape I want to see. I do have some pretty distinct lines, so I am going to jump back and right in from that highlight, I'm going to brush out into those midtones and the darker just to soften it just barely. I hope you guys can see I'm truly only going over each area like one brush stroke. I don't go back and forth, and you can kind of decide, is that enough? But I let it sit and I let it move and then make that call of, do I need more? But I don't, if I sit and scrub it, eventually I'm just going to turn it into a brown blob and I'm not going to have any of that texture. And for me personally, I like that texture. So, but hopefully you can see, again, if I just slow down and think about what I'm doing, it's exactly like we've been doing hair all along. I'm starting from a starting point, end point, going in. Starting point, end point, going in. I'm just having to look at those pieces and finding those starting and end points, but I'm still just using what the artist has given me. So I hope this will kind of transfer onto some of your other ones. So the other like up look that we were talking about last time was berets. So I tucked back over, we have a couple girls with berets at Craft and Kimmy, and we have, I know there's a Pilgrim girl that has braids like this. I know there's a long braid that's not in stock. I can't remember, Kim, if you have any others that you can think of, you're more than welcome to add those in. But this was one of the ones I knew of. And then the little Pilgrim girl, who's the same artist. So she has a very similar face and style. So I just keep swapping back between my E4s and my E2s just to keep myself entertained as well as you, but keeping it really simple today on color. I think that's one of the more complicated parts of hair, is that not only do you have these styles and things we're trying to do, but then you add that whole complication of they can pretty much be any color under the rainbow anymore. And so it does get more complicated. All right. braids. So we'll take a quick look kind of at her whole head of hair, or at least one half. But to give you guys an idea, at least what I think about when I'm doing braids. And again, you can make this as simple and as complicated as you guys want. But I'll give you guys kind of what's running through my head. The top of her head is easy because it's exactly what we've been doing. It's going from the part out, from the ear up, because at this point we have a distinct break at her ear. It's stopping there. So we can go kind of around the curve, coming back up toward the curve, from the part out, trying to get around that bend. That's the trickiest part on this one, getting around that bend a little bit. And then we have her little braids. Comes out from the tie at the bottom. Can you tell I'm avoiding the hard part? It's Turkey Day. Thanks. There you go. I knew there was a little pilgrim girl. It's Turkey Day. Perfect. So think about what a braid is. A braid is 3 pieces of hair that tuck in, tuck in, tuck in, tuck in, right? And against each other, if you think about it that way. So what's happening is we can see those pieces in this little image. So what I tend to do is I'll go from the top and from the bottom, from the top and from the bottom, because it's coming out from underneath and then getting tucked back in. It's coming out from underneath and getting tucked back in. It's coming out and getting tucked. It's coming out and getting tucked. It's coming out and around, getting tucked. Out and around, getting tucked. So I literally will go down the braid, and yes, that's the little record playing in my head. It's coming out and getting tucked, coming out and getting tucked. And so, and I do things like that when I'm coloring, in particularly in something like this that's repetitive. And that helps me keep it consistent, because that's one of the biggest issues with coloring, is trying to find that consistency throughout your coloring. It's going to be more pleasing to the eye. Even if it's your own style, kind of keeping that consistency is going to help the viewer see what you're seeing. So if you can be confident and say, yep, that's how it's supposed to look, that they're going to read it just how you want them to read it. So when I go to the darker, on the braids in particular, this is going to be really important, that rule of as you get darker, go fewer strokes. So when I come out from that top part, I'm literally going to only hit it like 1 or 2 times, like 1 or 2 little flicks, and you may not even see one on the other side. Now on her little braids, especially with the style with how it's drawn, you can make a choice about how, because there's really 2 pieces that are kind of collapsing in. You can kind of decide if you want to try to make it look like there's 3 chunks there. But that idea that it's coming out and tucking in, out and tucking in, hopefully that's giving it that kind of rolling effect. And same thing for me. If I get to this point and I'm like, wow, that's all I'm seeing is the flicking, I can go back, start in that highlight area, back and forth, really light. Let it move, so let it sit and shift, and then decide, that didn't blend quite enough, I might need to hit it one more time. Every time I lay this ink down, it's going to get darker. It's exactly it, Sheila. It's that repetitive, reminding yourself, wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. And once you've done it a bunch of times, it becomes muscle memory. That was the whole lesson in the Karate Kid. I'm doing a Karate Kid lesson here, in that it's coming out, going in, coming out, going in. It's that same, I'm trying to teach my hands the way to get that coloring done. And so in my head, that is what's playing a little bit. I love that comparison note though. I will never forget that one because that's exactly what that's like. So that is how I tackle braids. If they get more complex, you can slow it down and get more complex. There is a way, and we don't have any real good heads to do it on, to do little cornrows, those little tiny braids. We'd need probably a different image to really showcase that on, but you can do kind of these little rows of dark and light and create the look of that as well. So the last thing that someone had asked about, or one of the things we've talked about in the last time we did some hair coloring, was doing an ombre effect. So this is going back to kind of that color idea. But doing an ombre color versus just the solid color. So what I was going to do, I think because she's one of the easier heads of hair to color, was actually do the gal again. So I'm going to start with my E21. So this is my lightest earth tone that I would use on her head of hair if I was doing a series of E's. And I'm going to go ahead and color all of her hair that earth tone color. So here's the reasoning. And I would say this for makeup and for hair color. When we add color to our skin in the form of makeup or onto our hair in the form of dye, you are putting it on top of another color. So when I get my hair done with the color that, like I had it done today, she does take away some color because I have dark brown hair, but it's never white. It doesn't start with a bright white. It starts kind of with this almost really light blondish color. And then she puts my color on top of that. So even if I'm doing an ombre effect, her entire head of hair is going to get my lightest earth tone. If I put makeup on top of skin, I still want to color all of the skin first and put makeup on top of that, because that's what happens with makeup. It goes onto your skin color. So it's affected by that. I think that makes sense, but that's how I would explain that. So the top of the hair, I'm going to do it like mine is colored. The top of the hair gets the darker colors. So from the part, these markers desperately need to be cleaned. They're sticking. From the top, we're going to go from the part out and around the corner. And from the part out, this is the way my hand does not want to go today. Let's see if we can force it. And then I'm going to use one darker This is E27 if you're curious. I skipped 2.5. Wasn't giving me enough contrast. I'm a contrast girl. But my hair is colored at the bottom. So I would go from the tips up. And in this case, I am coloring it with a BG 5-3. And I'm going to go right up into those mid-tones. So I'm going to basically make that highlight pretty much disappear. And since this is the bottom of the hair falling behind her, it is also going to go blue-green. I'm going to grab a darker blue-green, and again, only from the bottom tips. Now I get to flick up. And again, overlapping into those browns. I know I want this hair to be considerably darker that's falling behind her, so I'm actually going to fill this in. Got a lot of ink going on back there, but that's okay. Looking up into my earth tones, my browns. And I actually like it about here, but We're gonna add one more. I've got a BG09. Fewer flicks. A few of them come all the way up. A few flicks on the under portion to show that it's falling behind her. Varying lengths. Push that back. Ooh, this one looks like it's gonna bleed all over the place. Okay. And now we have this ombre effect that's fairly realistic. You can, if you need to, I actually wouldn't go back with my highlight. I'm going to go back in with my mid-tone and pull a few of those strands further around the corner into my blue greens. There we go. Now see, my laptop flashed a couple times, Kim, so I don't know. I don't think it's me, but hopefully in the recording we'll have a pretty smooth recording. There we go, ombre. So I think I went through the list. These are ones I wrote down from last time. Curly hair, braids and updo, guys, and ombre. And I think we have done it. We have talked about guys' hair. Ta-dunk, ta-dunk. We have talked about updos, braids, and buns. We have talked about curly hair, tight curls, squiggly curls, wavy curls, and we've talked about ombre. Lots of hair going on. And Kim's showing us more options. Oh, yes. Crafty elves. Does she have braids too? I can't see. Oh, yes, long braid on the crafty elves. Thank you, Kim. That would be a fun one to do too. All right. So there we go. Here's my offer to all of you. As always, if there's things you guys would like to learn with your Copic markers, absolutely ask. I am happy doing these little tutorials and making them more kind of tutorial learning centric. It's what I love to do anyway. So if there's things you guys are wanting to learn, please let me know. You can name a stamp if you want to, or kind of give a general technique. I would really love to learn how to color fur. I would really love to learn how to color flowers or foliage. More scene work. We've done some scenes, but if you want to do more, let me know. But I will take some photos and get those up. And then if you guys have requests, make sure you tag my name. I usually try to look through the comments, but every once in a while I won't catch one unless it's got my name, so that it kind of pulls it up to my little inbox of saying someone kind of gave me a poke. So make sure to let me know if you've got requests for next time, and we will make sure you guys get the learning that you would like here at Craft and Kimmy. All right. I hope everybody has a great evening. It's only 4 o'clock where I'm at, but I know the East Coast is about a little after 8. So everyone have a good evening, and you guys have a great week. Enjoy, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for coming.